So yeah, my talk's really about Cerceris fumipennis, which is this wonderful little wasp that you can see in the upper right that has a curious life history in that it hunts within one family of beetles. Again, that's the buprestid family, the metallic wood borers. And so it was discovered a few years ago, and really we've been trying to think how we can make it work for us, how we can use this as a new monitoring tool for emerald ash borer and for other non-native buprestid beetles. So in the upper right-hand corner, we can see there that we've got our wasp, and it's bringing in an emerald ash borer, actually two, which is nice. There's one female that's paralyzed being carried under the wasp, and below that female is a male that's still trying to copulate with her. He just wouldn't let go. So by alternative sampling method, I mean alternative to these purple prism traps that are sort of the standard monitoring tool right now on the national level for emerald ash borer. And maybe alternative isn't completely correct, but at least supplemental sampling tool, something that can be used in conjunction with these purple prism traps for really a more robust and specific sampling and surveying for EAB. So I've got a little background information that I'll get into here in a moment, but hopefully you guys are all aware, the basic information on emerald ash borer. So we'll just go through that fairly quickly and get into the meat of it, which is using the Cerceris wasp. So again, my name is Warren Hellman. I'm under Dr. Melissa Furkey, and we're both out of SUNY-ESF over in Syracuse. So like starting off with this slide, this is kind of a neat little thing that was put together from a few different sources, but this is just a map of non-native forest pests across the United States, where that blue and purple, that's a higher density. So hopefully you can see New York there. It's kind of glowing blue. And I saw Dr. Sandy Leopold talk about this figure a few weeks ago, and he said really what this is reflecting, what they found to be the best predictor of these densities of non-native forest pests is the actual composition of the forest. That here in the Northeast we have much more diverse forests than elsewhere, and so a much more diverse forest can harbor many more species, and that's what we see sort of reflected through this figure. So this is kind of what's brought us all together, this beautiful little beetle. And Leslie mentioned I do collect insects, and I think this is really truly a lovely beetle. But so here we are. So this beetle is in the buprestid family, the metallic wood boring family of beetles, which we'll come back to shortly. Introduced into the port of Michigan near Detroit sometime in the late 1990s. We're not sure. It was detected in 2002 for the first time. But yeah, introduced from China, arrived likely in packing material, pallets, etc. And in the last decade since we've found it, it's spread to quite a few different states. It spreads here locally, mostly through the movement of firewood and nursery stock and raw timber destined for processing at lumber mills. And really the agent of death here is the larvae. So these beetle larvae are feeding under the bark on cambium tissue, and at high densities, this packing in of larvae into a tree will girdle the tree, killing it. So again, yeah, gorgeous insect. Moving on. So here are the a few of the life stages of the larvae as they grow. In the top left, moving to the top right, we can see the typical feeding damage. And so this is what you'll see at low densities in an ash tree. If you peel back the bark, and if this ash tree has emerald ash borer larvae in it, you'll get this nice little serpentine gallery growing wider and wider as the insect gets larger and larger. But we see at the bottom left, this is a result of a high density of larvae in a tree. This is what's killing the tree. they're no longer able to feed in that nice little serpentine gallery. They really have to go every which way to find new cambium tissue to feed on. And if you imagine this wrapped around a tree, that's going to completely remove all of the cambium tissue girdling the tree. It's no longer able to move nutrients up and down, and essentially dies. And then the final picture there is just a tree that has a moderate level of emerald ash borer infestation, and you're starting to see some canopy thinning and crown dieback. So here's a recent map of the total distribution that we know about, with the epicenter there in Michigan, and now found in 13 different states and 2 Canadian provinces. And so you can really see that these outlier populations in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Missouri, these are all from human-mediated introductions, likely through firewood again, or the movement of landscaping trees. Considering the beetle only has can only fly a few miles unassisted, this is definitely human-mediated. And most recently, what's sparked a lot of the research that I'm doing is this small dot in southwestern New York, in Randolph, New York, where emerald ash borer was found for the first time in New York State last June, and that's currently where I am sitting right now. I'm doing some work down out there, but the Randolph infestation is on many people's high priority lists, including my own. And a final little figure showing the ash volume here in the United States. And again, we saw that we have a very diverse forest, but now we're seeing that part of that diversity is definitely ash. Some 900 million trees, comprising about 7% of our forests. So it's a really high volume here, which could harbor, potentially, that's a lot of bioresources for these emerald ash borer to use. So locally we have three species that are native to New York: white, green, and black ash. They're definitely of economic import, used for tool handles, baseball bats, street trees, and then useful as firewood. And the black ash is the only type of tree and only species of ash that can be used for indigenous basket making. So there's definitely a cultural importance there as well. And I had this come up before. Economic import is, again, economic importance, not what we're importing from elsewhere. So right now, I'm mostly interested in surveying. That's been kind of the focus of my work. And so currently there are 2 main ways that we survey for emerald ash borer. One is using these sticky purple prism traps, and another is through visual surveys. As you can see, this gentleman up in a bucket truck, and that's not ash, but it still shows the point. So these purple prism traps are hung up in ash trees. There's a little chemical lure that's thought to be attractive to emerald ash borer. But again, one of the downsides of this is the high cost in man hours. This is pretty expensive to get crews of 2. They need a vehicle to go around putting up these traps. And 1,200 plus traps were put out here in Randolph last year after the discovery of the incipient population. And of those 1,200 plus traps, none of them caught a single emerald ash borer. So that's kind of a cause for concern. These have been shown previously not to be very effective when emerald ash borer is at low population densities, as it likely is right now here in Randolph. And then secondly, these visual surveys which require some searcher to go out looking for the telltale signs of emerald ash borer infestation. And those are things like the crown dieback, small little epicormic branches, which you can see in the bottom left there, shooting off of the trunk of that tree. Emergence holes, these D-shaped exit holes coming out of the the bark, and you'll also see bark splitting. Again, this isn't very successful at low densities. Most of these signs you won't see until the tree is already dead, and it's really too late because it's likely spread much further than the one tree that you're looking at. So really what we want to do is try to find these populations when they are still low, so we can respond to them and make control efforts more effective and cheaper. I think that's a huge concern. So that brings us to this wasp, Cerceris fumipennis, and I'd like to get you guys a little acquainted with the wasp and how we've been putting this wasp to work for us. So it's a wonderful little wasp. Again, it subsists completely on blue-crested beetles. So female wasps go out, catch beetles, bring them back to their nest, where they'll give them to their larvae. So it's not the adult beetles that are feeding, or the adult wasps that are feeding on the beetles. It's the young wasp larvae that develop on the beetles. So it's in the family Crabronidae for those that are interested in these kind of things. It's a solitary digger wasp, as all digger wasps are, meaning that a single female will occupy a nest, and she will go out, collect whatever insect or prey item they use, bring it back to their nest. They have a huge range from Canada all the way down to Florida, and then along the East Coast all the way out towards Wyoming and New Mexico. So this is a native wasp, and so we're not talking about it, using another exotic species here. It has a few identifying marks, which are important if you actually have people out there finding wasp nests, which is hopefully one of the outcomes of this talk today, just get other people out there looking for these wasps. But identifying marks are just kind of this creamy yellow band on the abdomen, which we can see here. They've got smoky, dark wings, and the size is about 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch long. So they are a good-sized wasp, though many other wasps have these similar features. So primarily what we use are these facial markings. Females are most recognizable by the 3 dots on the front of their face. Males are much smaller and have these 2 sort of creamy yellow semicircles on their face, but you don't encounter the males as often. It's mostly the females. Males only exist to mate with the females, and then they're gone. The female does all the work. She goes out hunting and brings the beetles back to her nest. So important, I guess, to my project is locating nesting sites. So a large focus of my research has been to go out and find nesting sites across New York. There's a collaborative effort with a few of the northeastern states, including New York, through the U.S. Forest Service to compile a list of as many colonies of the Cerceris wasp as we can. And so hopefully one of the outcomes of this is, getting more eyes out there, finding more nests, and that can go into our ever-growing database. So this is a typical nesting site. This is close to Syracuse, New York, out in Baldwinsville, on some DEC land there. And when I say typical site, it's nice, it's open. These wasps like nesting in sort of sandy soil, something easy to dig in. And we tend to find them associated with human-impacted sites. So a seldom used road like this is great. Places like parks and baseball diamonds, again, are great locations to find wasp nests. And they are quite recognizable. There are other species of ground nesting wasps that will use the same habitat, but the Cerceris wasp is quite distinctive. So just going over the site criteria again, you want something in full sun. You're not going to find these wasps in the middle of a copse of trees. the impacted and moderately sandy soils. So some sort of human impact will make, at least a bare patch of soil where they might begin to nest. But at the same time, it can't be too overused. So a dirt road that gets a lot of traffic isn't likely to have it, as well as a baseball field that gets a lot of play. So a lot of like high school baseball fields and maybe college baseball fields that get that crushed clay treatment and get tilled up every year. That's not a great place to find these wasps. But I primarily use Google Earth to select sites and then drive out to find those spots. So here's a few examples of that. These are aerial images from Google Earth, and so you can see right here, this is a prime location from space. We can see this wonderful sandy soils, and I drove out here and was able to find a colony right out here. So this is a speedway, the Saratoga Albany Speedway out there. But again, this is a dirt trail where I found some wasps. This is that same road that we looked at a few slides back aerially that has a couple hundred Cerceris wasps nesting in it. And again, baseball fields. So just looking at these two corners here, the top right and the bottom left, these are some seldom used baseball fields where I was able to find a lot of wasp nests. So primarily when I'm looking for nests, I will go to say elementary school and junior high fields that don't get much use in the summer, but a big city park might, at least cities that have a nice budget, will put a lot of money into maintaining those diamonds. And again, you can see here this field was recently raked, gets a lot of attention. You're not likely to find a wasp in that type of location. Another typical site, kind of a well-used park area, a lot of exposed soil, and campgrounds have been found to be great nesting habitats. So I'd like to just keep that in mind if you are out this summer and are able to spare some time, look down at the ground, find some wasps, and I'd love to hear about either potential wasp nests or ones that you've confirmed to add to the database. Myself out there, I can only see that's just one set of eyes. So even 2 or 3 extra people looking quadruples the search effort. These nest holes are another telltale sign of Cerceris. They've got a very characteristic nest entrance, which is as they excavate soil, you get this nice perfect ring of soil built up around the entrance to that nest, unlike some other wasps that instead of digging straight down like Cerceris does, they go in an oblique angle, and their excavated soil goes off all to one side, much like when your dog gets into your flower bed and starts digging holes. So again, these holes, entrance to these holes are about 8 millimeters, which is a little larger than a pencil, and will go straight down. And typically when you find a suspect nest in the mornings, especially around 9, 10 in the morning before the wasp actually leaves her nest to go foraging, you can just see her guarding the nest entrance, and that's a great opportunity to see those 3 lightish yellow cream dots on her face to confirm that it is indeed a Cerceris nest. And these are solitary wasps, but they do live sort of colonially, so you'll get a large density of single nests in an area. So just something to add into your search image there. Here's an example here of 4 nests all right next to one another, as well as a couple of dropped crested beetles. That's another good telltale sign, is you'll see dropped prey items that for whatever reason weren't quite able to make it into the nest. So if you find some nest entrances, you can just look around the area, and chances are I almost always see 1 or 2 or more beetles that have been dropped in the vicinity. Taking a little cross-section of the nest, we see that this nest does start by going straight down, and then will begin to slant a little bit. What's kind of important to note here are these little circles, the A, B, C, and D. These are wasp cells. So the female wasp flies out of her nest. She goes into some of the neighboring trees. She'll catch a blue-crested beetle, paralyze it with a little sting, fly it back to her nest, and then bury it in one of these little chambers. And so once she's collected enough beetles, she'll lay a single egg in there, close off the chamber, and begin to excavate the next chamber. So we'll come back to this because I've used these. I'm using these chambers for one part of my research. It's also very important to mention that these are friendly wasps. They do not sting. They are able to paralyze their prey, but you can pick them up, you can handle them. You don't have to, but you certainly are able to without fear of retribution. This image shows one of those excavated cells. So each one of these clumps is an excavated cell, and inside of there is a wasp larvae that probably at this point pupated, is in a little silken cocoon inside and waiting to emerge the following summer. Adults emerge out here at least in late June, early July, and are active through August into September. And by active, they're out foraging for beetles. Again, here's just another little image of a wasp carrying a paralyzed beetle. Another one, and again, these are super characteristic. These just three white dots for telling this apart from all other wasps you might encounter. So how are we using this for biosurveillance? Another little point I need to mention is we know Cerceris goes out, it collects blue-crested beetles, brings them back to their nest. One of the beetles it does bring back is emerald ash borer if it is in the area, but this is not being considered as a control method, simply just a survey method. They don't target emerald ash borer preferentially over any other beetle, so yeah, there's no high specificity for just emerald ash borer. It just happens to be one of the incidental catches that the wasp will bring back if emerald ash borer is indeed in an area near a wasp nest. So a couple ways we've put this wasp to work include physically monitoring a nest. So if we find a colony, we built these things, we're just calling them collars. It's essentially a 3x5 card with a hole punch, and you'll line one of these holes up with the entrance to the wasp nest. And what's nice about this diameter of the hole punch is it allows the female wasp to enter and exit her nest, but if she is coming back to her nest with a beetle, she's unable to get the beetle through. So it's restrictive in that sense. So that's how we monitor nests, naturally established nests. There's also been some work in Canada looking at mobile nests. So one way that it's been done is through the actual excavation of active adult nests, basically punching out a little cube of soil with the wasp nest, transporting it to a location, and releasing the wasps there to go out and begin foraging. And they have a high fidelity to their nest area, so even if you pick up their nest and move it somewhere completely different, they'll continue on business as usual, even though they're in a completely foreign environment. They're remarkable at a little orientation flight before they leave their nest, just to memorize local landmarks and use that to return to their nest. and a smaller, definitely more economical method of transporting wasps in this mobile fashion is the use of these tube nests. So this is just a little 4-inch PVC pipe that you can pound into the ground around a Cerceris an adult Cerceris nest, and you can just extract this little tube, and it doesn't require the use of this heavy machinery or renting of the U-Haul trailer. So here's an image of that monitoring in place. Each one of these little collars is over a wasp nest, and I would just be simply standing out there with an insect net waiting for females to bring beetles back to their nest entrances. And so I can either catch them in flight or just wait till they actually try to get through the collared nest. And they make a good deal of noise when they're doing this, so they're easy to locate. And while they're struggling, you just have to give them a little tap with your finger, and they'll just simply drop the beetle. Again, they won't sting you, and they'll just fly off and go catch another one. So it's a really easy system. It doesn't disturb them too much. Yeah, easy system to use. And there's a picture of that in action. It's a little fuzzy, but you see the female trying to enter into her nest. What's another nice thing about this monitoring? So when I find a colony, I'll sit out there, monitor for a few days or periodically through the summer, and see what beetles are being brought into these nests. And if none of them are emerald ash borer, we've found that after you collect 30 to 50 beetles from a given site, you can fairly confidently say that no emerald ash borer is in the area. So this is a really great project for volunteers. We've got nests that can be adopted. So a volunteer just needs to go out there with these materials, which is just a golf tee, the collar, a Ziploc bag to collect beetles in, a net and a camp chair, probably some sunscreen too. But it's a fairly cheap monitoring package to put together, and it gets people out there actively monitoring for emerald ash borer. So this is great when we have nests that need to be monitored, but one of the problems that we've been having is not being able to find nests close enough to sites where we would like to monitor. So for example, I'm out here in Randolph, New York, and extensive searches haven't found any Cerceris nests in the area. So that's where this idea of mobile nests come in. So we can bring nests in from outside and use those to survey. And we can also take these nests to other high-risk areas. So the Buffalo, Niagara area is very close to a known emerald ash borer infestation within 20 miles. And so that's a high-priority spot to monitor. But again, I haven't found any Cerceris colonies out there, so this would be another great application for these mobile nests. My specific research objectives are to find as many nests as I can in New York State, and essentially through weekly monitorings, I'm cataloging what's there, and at the same time looking for both native and non-native blue-crested beetles. So in this way, looking at that second objective, I can use the WASP as a census tool, not only just an emerald ash borer sampling tool, but we can take great censuses of local blue-crested communities, something which was very difficult to do before. These beetles you seldom encounter them. They're up high in trees and very difficult to track. And I'm also looking at a new method of transporting wasp colonies, and that's this idea of seeding or transplanting colonies. So we'll run through these fairly quickly. These are the current known locations that I have of Cerceris nests in New York State. Part of this is just a function of search effort. I've concentrated a lot of time out in the Albany area, in the central New York area, and up here in this general St. Lawrence area. Another volunteer found a great colony out here in the Hudson Valley. I know that from looking at historical records that Long Island's full of Cerceris nests, but I just haven't been out that way. But thorough searching out here in western New York hasn't turned up any yet. So it's always good to have more eyes out there, but I suspect that one of the limitations is just the lack of the sandy soils that they like. Soil tends to be a little bit more, a higher clay component out there. And again, I know they're in the Ithaca area too, but just haven't spent much time searching. So here's just a result of some of my census data of just buprestids in general. Here's a quick little species list, the number of beetles I caught, and we're actually trying to put together a little phenology of when these adult buprestids are active. This is just another great little incidental thing you can do with the wasp. So based on when I was catching these beetles, I can say when the adults are active. Again, something that's more difficult to do if you're just relying specifically on museum collections. Just to give you an idea of the amount of species we're turning up from different sites, here are a couple of my long-term monitoring sites, and yeah, the amount of beetles we've caught, and then here's the number of species we're getting per site. So actually out in Saratoga at the DEC tree nursery, we have a high number, 18 species out of the 74 beetles caught. And I assume some of that's just a reflection of the different species of trees that are being grown on the tree farm, but still interesting nonetheless. And finally, here's this idea of colony seeding. And I was unable to upload some of the pictures I'd taken of my recent work with this colony seeding or transplanting. But what I've essentially done is out here in central New York, I've been digging up these wasp cells, which I said have a little overwintering pupa. And so I dug up these overwintering pupa, put them in a milk crate with some soil, and drove them out to Randolph, and I have buried them in the ground out there. So instead of trying to bring adults out, I've brought the larvae out, and the idea is that they will emerge late this June or in early July and just begin foraging. I brought sand and habitat that they like from where they are found, which hopefully should ensure that they remain in these nests in Randolph. And we can, one of the hopes is that we can use these to delimit the infestation here and use this in other areas. So strategically place nests at varying distances from the epicenter of an infestation might give us an idea of how far out the beetle populations have spread. So when your only other option is to use those purple prism traps, this might be at least a good complement to that, because these wasps have been found to locate emerald ash borer when it is at low densities where you won't be able to catch them with the more conventional purple prism traps and visual inspections. So that's a quick overview of my research and the wasp itself. That's all I have for you guys today. There's a lot of people to thank, but I'd also like to refer you to these two great websites to find out more about Cerceris and emerald ash borer, and then you have my email address here if you'd like to get a hold of me. And if you are able to get some volunteers out or would like some literature on the wasp, I can certainly email you that. And I might have a workshop sometime early in July in the Syracuse area, where I just, again, give a little presentation like this, and then go out to one of our active wasp colonies and show how to monitor for the beetle. If anybody knows of some volunteers that might be interested through the PRISM, the CERTS, and et cetera. So that's all I've got, and